Here we are, take number, I don't know, 57 on putting this Schlage block together. Um, what I found is the difficult item is surely the springs. These two springs right here are what cause all the trouble. Without the springs, it's fairly easy to put it together, and so I've developed a new putting together regime that I'm going to test for the first time here, which is to put it together without the springs and then wind the springs in there at the end. And tricky as that is, I think it might actually be less tricky than trying to put it together with the springs in place, everything under tension, because that's eluded me at least 3 times now, and I'm starting to feel embarrassed. So here I've got all the stuff with the button and this inner sanctum for the springs, which it'll just all kind of lays together. And this little doohickey here lays over the top. And this is what the springs will eventually ride on. And as you can see, the little outrigger of the button, the flat metal part, goes in the top of this, the bent piece that the springs ride on, that little slot, and then the central shaft of the button is down below, kind of like the back of a cat, more or less. And then that all lines up with this long slot in the shaft, which goes through this metal faceplate. I heard by the noise that I just lost the little spring rider thingy. So, but anyway, despite the awkwardness of all this, it is actually easier to do this than when the springs are also added to the mix. Okay, so now I kind of have all these pieces together, and I'll push the button forward a bit so it's ready to engage with the other parts. Get the knob lined up at sort of like top dead center. And so now I'm kind of holding this whole deal together, ready to mate it with this part, the outside doorknob portion, and I hold that one in its correct position too. And then I put the round shaft of the button into that round hole, and the upper outrigger flat part goes into the flat slot, as you can sort of see, and I just, fit that all together in sort of more or less one motion. Now push that springy part into place and hold it all. And you'll notice I'm holding the outer doorknob in my other hand. I'm not resting it on the table as is tempting to do, because that pushes all the crap out of position. So this is almost designed to be very difficult to do. But then I'll click it, and there's everything except for the springs in place. And I'll sort of make sure that the button lines up to push and all that, which it does. So that's what I didn't have the first time. So other than the springs, it's all ready to go. The springs go in this top part, and now my theory is that it'll actually be easier to wind these springs in to place. So one goes on each side, and because there's no sort of like wrong place for them to go down below, once I get a bit of it started past, and then wind counterclockwise, of course, to send almost all the spring into place.
I can see if I can
Trying
turn
new
it back
theory
on.
here, baby.
Okay, I can help you with the ladder.
Winding until there's just about one turn left on top for that one spring, and then I'll do the rest with pliers and such to get it underneath the dimple. So there's a moment of uncertainty while I spring this guy past, and then we'll see if it gets more difficult to do the second one when the first one's in place. But I still think this awkward procedure is maybe easier than trying to build the whole thing with those springs in place, because that was getting kind of embarrassing to me. My guess is if one was working with these locks a lot, simple jig or tool or two would help, like just something to hold the springs compressed, like one does with like car valve springs and such. Something that just keeps them out of trouble would make all the difference, or sort of a jig to line it all up on somehow. Okay, I got that one spring pushed in there, but he's not on the dimple yet, so I'm gonna work him in maybe with the needle nose. Is this coming out on the screen a little? So, yeah, it gets a little awkward, and I'm trying to be careful not to damage the spring in any way. Okay, facing the right way, constrain him with the other end. Okay, now he's on the dimple. So I got 1 out of 2 springs there. Tricky, but I'm not embarrassed yet. Now we'll try winding the second one down in his little slot. Again, counterclockwise. Till I have a little bit left. Maybe I'll actually leave a little bit more this time and not wind it fully all the way in as far as I can, so I have more to work with, and I'll just grab it with the needle
I spackled
noses
this morning.
and
This is gonna need to be sanded,
put one in there.
and then we'll pull the door out as far as it goes, and we'll paint this one side, not the other side. Okay, so that's their garage.
Okay, he's on there. There. That is now assembled. Spring is working. Buttons working. So that's my new way to assemble this Schlage lock.
We can use
Ta-da!
pins.
The rest is sort of window dressing, but we got this part over like that. Well, that's as far as it goes. The trim knob doesn't meet because this is adjustable to different heights of door. So that's on there. This piece is through. Our carefully saved little cotter pin ready for now to, okay, no, he's not in there yet because these slots have to come all the way through. There we go. And there's actually 2 holes that could take the cotter pin, but it seems to always go on the one that's farthest away from this by the markings, so that'd be over here. And a little pliers action. And he's in there. Of course, it's got a longer leg of the cotter pin. That should go towards the outside so that it's easier to just bend one part and thus not overburden the cotter pin. That's the important part. Getting it in is to sing the right song. There it goes. Okay. Push and then bendy inside, and that deal is together now. I'm ready to go into the door.